All right, I'm going to let all of the folks in who are here so far. And then I'm going to spotlight you, Dan. So you're going to be spotlighted for everyone. There you go.
All right. Big screen.
Um, and I'll admit everybody. I'll spotlight myself with you to begin with, because I'll just kind of introduce you and um, let's start letting everybody in. Let everybody get connected here. And Dan, you have some introduction of yourself as well, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'll let you do a lot of that, but I'll do a quick introduction
Cool.
myself. But let's see here. I think everybody's connected now. All right. So welcome everybody to today's coaching session. I'm really excited for it. This is Dan Soliman will be joining us, and Dan is a professional impact investor. I'll say it that way because you have a lot of different aspects of impact investing that you've gotten to be involved in throughout the years and throughout your career. But I will say a couple things is this is an affordable housing example, but for all of the students and student teams who are joining us today and who will watch the recording later, this is really important, really for anybody to watch and listen to and engage with and ask questions about, because it'll give you some aspects of how do I look at the stakeholders who are involved in whatever project you're working on, and then how do I understand things like social impact metrics and how to use those to really guide the process so you're having the impact that you mean to have, and then also how that impact and the stakeholders can help guide who the different sources of capital will be in a blended finance type scenario. So while this is affordable housing, an affordable housing example, it's beneficial for all of you to listen to here and then ask questions about as we move forward. So Dan, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to let you start because you'll have a much more nuanced introduction for today's session than what I can provide. But we will provide more information to all the students about your background as well, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my pleasure. And I think, yeah, I have an eclectic background. So,
You do. You do. And I don't want to take too much time of me talking.
yeah.
Your
Yeah.
background. I'd
No.
rather you share. So thank you.
But, yeah, so let me share my screen. Can everyone see, my presentation?
Yes, we can.
All right. All right. So quickly, I like this quote. One of my mentors used to have this on his wall, because a lot of stuff we used to be a first mover in a lot of things. And I think a lot of what you all are trying to do is people always think this is impossible, this can't work, and it's like, yeah, difficult we can do, impossible it just take a little longer. So the only way to try to do something impossible is just try it and see what happens. So in this conversation, and I'm really excited to learn from you all as well, since you from all over the world. And my work has mostly been in the U.S. I've done some international work in the global South. But basically, who am I? The big picture goals of affordable housing. What does that look like? The affordable housing spectrum. Like, what does that mean? And how to sort of structure that. Sort of the stakeholders, the value chain in real estate development in general, and looking at that through a case study. So this was one of the deals I did in Hawaii a while back, and taking all that that work through how to structure the deal. But also you can look at it and think about it if some of you are thinking about operationally services or different products within affordable housing or real estate. We can talk about that as well. So who am I really quickly? So I've done a bunch of impact investing. I've launched innovation competitions, things of that nature. Started a fintech company for a major nonprofit. And I started out by doing this work as a reform school teacher. Uh, on the right here, if you're interested, this is a friend of mine. She upcycles um, like old sweatshirts and whatnot. She took 4 sweatshirts from my past and makes them. She's really talented. She is scaling her business now. So I always like to give a shout out to minority and women-owned businesses, especially ones who do recycle and upcycling. But a little bit about myself. So affordable housing, big picture. What do you need when you have affordable housing? I think there's 3 things you need. The house needs to be, or the home needs to be livable, affordable, and healthy. So what does that mean in real time? So affordable means, at least in the US, it has to be no more of their 30% of their gross income on housing. It has to be stable and it has a potential for wealth creation, meaning, when there's a stable payment structure, you don't have to worry about the rent getting jacked up or available variable interest mortgage, things of that nature. And that is sort of a tenet of affordable housing. The 30%, that might change, depending where you are in the world. That might be more, that might be less. Livable, meaning universally designed for all, like the unit itself, is that useful for, say, a new family, or as well as an older adult? Surprisingly, a lot of those things are beneficial for both. You think about OXO, who does a really good job at this. They design things that are sort of good for people throughout the age spectrum and throughout the ability spectrum. Also looking at it from how this housing unit or housing units integrate into the community. Are they transit oriented? Do they have? Are they close to a supermarket, services, healthcare? How does that work within the community, and then how does that empower the community, and how's the people within it? And then healthy. So really big push, especially in the US in the last 10 years, is integrating healthcare and housing as a social determinant of health. This has been some of the most interesting investments, and I think this will continue to work. I think the 3 biggest opportunities to empower people and also create shared value enterprises are around older adults, families with young children, and underhoused or unhoused or homeless persons. Those are the 3 biggest pain points in the healthcare system that they are actively making significant investments in. So looking at how to keep healthcare costs down and how to empower people is one of the huge shared value opportunities that people are actively working on now. And then environmentally sound features. So, LEED, all these other things, photovoltaics, even sort of, I think photovoltaics and, interesting insulation, R-value insulation, things of that nature are good, but also there are sort of what I call 1.0 solutions. So instead of replacing all the windows, putting in a storm window, right? You can take down cost that way and create shared value solutions. And this is really, coming up now, but being mindful that how to keep costs, especially the capital costs, in line, so it doesn't, you don't reduce unit count too much. All right. And sort of then looking at the affordable housing spectrum. So again, this is especially the top one, more about the U.S. and it's probably applicable to Europe and developed countries in Asia, at least developed economies. Affordability is area median income. So anywhere from 0 to 60% of area median income is sort of the rental threshold traditionally in the U.S. 80% area median income is usually the threshold for sale housing. But in high cost markets, say the top 10 markets, especially the top 5 markets, you'll find some affordable housing that is not subsidized by the federal government in that 80% realm. And then the 80% to 150 is workforce housing, which could be rental, also home ownership, sort of a mix there. You might think 150% of an area median income is a bit high, but if you look at high cost areas like San Francisco, New York, Hawaii, Boston, there is really a dearth of opportunities both on the for sale and even the rental markets. And then when you look at sort of the rental to home ownership continuum, I think on the left you have rental, just straight up rental. Like that's the goal of that, in my mind, is to stabilize that family, that household, that community, right? To have them have, so they know what they're paying, the expected payment. There is no payment shocks or differentiation, and it's a certain percent of their income, so they can sort of make a plan to grow wealth and worry about other variables in their life. Then you have sort of rent to own, for sale restrictions, sort of like deed riders and land banks and things of that nature, all the way to just for sale with no restrictions. And that's more on the wealth creation side. And there's always interesting conversations, especially in the for sale with restrictions and for sale, just outright. How do you do that? And those are great conversations to have. And there's interesting opportunities actually in the startup space around that right now. So looking at the stakeholders, and again, as Jeff said, this is pretty much for any deal, I think, in leverage finance. I learned it in affordable housing. I think affordable housing is a great way to learn this because all these stakeholders are really, really vocal. You will hear from everybody. One of my professors in grad school used to talk about being tri-sector competent, public, private, and nonprofit sectors. I always think about it as the four corners, including the clients. So in the public sector, you your typical housing agencies, government agencies, state, local government. Not a lot in the federal government here. Most of the money in the U.S., I have to say, qualify that, flows through the federal government, flows through the state and local governments. So those are the people who really have the power, the agencies that have the power. On the private institutions, you have the banks and the financial institutions. I put individuals here because there are certain individuals in communities that like they can make your life very challenging. And that is one person. They probably have the same kind of power map like this, and they know how to work it quite well. And then other service providers, healthcare, supermarkets, etc. Nonprofits, I would look at these as, your advocates, channels for people, channels that get people ready to either buy a house or rent a house, and service providers within the organization, and then the clients, right? Talking to the people who are going to be there. So sort of above the horizontal line, you have the power. Below it, you have the people, right? You have the people with the money on the top. You have the people who can advocate on the bottom. And really working this, will make you successful, I think, like I just said, not only in affordable housing, but in like any deal, right? Because you're always going to have these people. Some of them are quiet, some of them are loud. Sometimes, it always changes. I literally set this up for almost every deal I do. I have people, one of my bosses used to say, you got to identify your magic dozen, right? Magic dozen could be 6 people, it could be 13 people. Usually it's about 5 to 7, and really how to engage them, make sure they're on board throughout that process, because at any point they could, kill the deal. And looking at the value chain. So depending on where you all want to, create your blended finance businesses or investment opportunities, you have your sort of what I call it pre-development. And this is where sort of if you were looking at development, this is where the game is won and lost, right? Putting the deal together. In the U.S., this takes about 3 years to do currently. You can have anywhere from, let's see, on an easy deal, probably have like four levels of financing. More complex, you can have like 18. And you imagine 18 is like 18 sets of lawyers, 18 bankers, 18 stakeholders. And that's before you even talk to anyone in the community. This is really hard work, especially in high cost areas. You have the construction part, which is probably the smallest here, but is by no means the smallest when you're actually doing this. Especially if you're doing a big deal, they could take 1 to 5 years to build it, and then operations, ramp up and stabilization, get the right people in the community, and providing those services within that community. And looking at this value chain, I think there's really interesting opportunities. If some of you are looking at businesses, how to optimize parts of this value chain. I think there are really interesting opportunities there, as well as on the tail end, operations of products and services within communities. A lot of opportunities to have investors and also have empower people in the community, as well as empower the community as a whole. So next, we'll talk. I'll take you through a deal that I worked on. I was joking around with Jeff and Tracy. I was like, this is one of the hardest deals. I had 2 deals in Hawaii during this time. This one was the easier one, but some interesting things came out of it. So Halakuila Place initially was envisioned to be a 232 unit workforce housing deal for sale, anywhere from 80 to 150% of AMI. When we were talking to clients who wanted to potentially live in this development, they were literally living in vans on the sides, like close to like in parking lots, right? Most of these people were hospitality workers, and there would be like 4 or 5 guys who would live in a van during like a 5-day work week, and then they would go to a different island to see their family on their 2 to 3 days off. And it was amazing. It was really eye-opening because it was so expensive in Hawaii. There was very little affordable housing opportunities there. So in Kaka'aka, which was a business district, again, this was about 15 years ago, there was, at the time, this was light industrial, and they were turning it over to make it retail and, home ownership or for housing. We were looking at about $80 million as a total development cost, and we were using new market tax credits, sales proceeds, and some home funds from the state of Hawaii to fund this. The new market tax credits, we were the second one in the country, I think, to use it for sale housing. It's kind of an innovative way to do that. If any of you do that, I would suggest don't do that on your deals. If you're looking at blended finance, it's extremely complicated. There's better ways to spend your brain damage than looking at new market tax credit deals. But if you do, you can email me, and I'm more than happy to take a look at it. So this was all well and good. We had everyone lined up. We had one of the federal senators, we had governor, we had the mayor, and then 2009 happened. Market crashed. And the whole deal went sideways. So we had to figure out, what to do and basically restructure this. So this was the people who were in the power map here. I would say the most important people here were on the private side, the private developer that we work with. We were actually an owner's rep. So county and city of Honolulu owned the parcel, and they were going to own the parcel throughout the time. And we were going to develop it and take any construction risk and operation risk. And then the mayor and the economic development agencies, those 2 heads flipped during this time when the market crashed, and it made life challenging, right? Because we had to the deal that we had was just not around anymore. Working with the nonprofits in the area they were really great. They really wanted this to happen. And also working with the clients. I mean, I think one of the things we did well, we had over, 200-300 client meetings, really meeting with people, saying that people were ready for a home ownership deal. We were saying, we might not be able to do this as a rental, if at all, and really meeting with them and engaging them throughout the process. So in affordable housing, when you're looking at a deal, what are the primary drivers? I think the one thing you can look at is any real estate deal. If you're looking to buy a house for yourself, start a small business, acquisition cost of the land or the property will drive everything. And it's $0. I think there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's always something. If they're going to give it to you for $0, rarely, I don't think I've ever seen one where it's like, hey, this is a windfall, we're going to get it for free. Looking at, is it has a clean title? What can you build as of right? If you're looking at any kind of variances, you're looking at going in front of community members and things of that nature. That could take years, years. There's a friend of mine, he has a deal, took him 10 years to get it, get everything as of right. Services, water, power, sewer, you might think, yeah, this is a no-brainer, but if you don't have water, power, sewer at the site, even if it's quarter mile away, good luck trying to get it there. That will take time, and it takes a lot of money. Environmental concerns, if there's anything in the phase one or if it's super fun, things of that nature. Not to say that these things you can't do, but you have to really take into account and with clear eyes and say, how am I going to do this efficiently and effectively? And so, the deal doesn't go sideways at some point, especially if you're looking at something at scale, like if you want to do, if there's like 10 super fun sites around the country and you want to develop them all, right? Looking at how to get that soft debt in, that soft capital to bridge, bridge from, you just cleaning the site or capping the site or whatever you have to do, takes time. And it's not a non-zero cost for the holding cost. Because the one thing it can do is really have the deal go sideways if you just hold it for too long. Even a free piece of property, I've seen that many times. People keep holding this free piece of property for 5-10 years, and then you're $1 million in the hole before you even put a shovel down. So I broke the due diligence into 2 parts again, and this is sort of the fun part, at least as I think is the fun part, right? Again, starting with the community, what do they need? Is it a home ownership opportunity? Is it rental opportunity? What kind of services, again, can be put into that? How are you going to break up the building? How do you talk with the clients? Jeff and team had a presenter yesterday. They said, go to barbershops, go to salons. I've gone to churches a lot. If you think about it, if you're like a local politician, you go to the same places, right? I used to go, there was one place when I used to work in Boston, I used to hang out at the Burger King. There was a lot of people there. I used to work at, Jack's Deli. Jack's, where all the local politicians you go, I used to have lunch there every day, talk with them every day. Elks groups, was it, any kind of like fraternities or sororities or like Rotary Club, any kind of community group, go to them. And I would say go to the ones that you think are going to help you, and also especially go to the ones that think they're gonna hurt you, right? When I was in Boston, there was this guy. He was talk about the private sector stakeholder. He was an army of one. His nickname was Harry the Greek. Harry had an auto shop body, and he would come and just yell at me at every meeting, just mercilessly yell at me every meeting. And what I did was I made it for 2 years. I had lunch with him every day. Every day I would have lunch with him because I was like, there is no way you are going to, make my deals go sideways. And number one, he actually had some good feedback. And number two, when people went on the meetings and saw him yelling at me, they were like, oh, this guy has lunch with him every day. So, it can't be that bad. So, there's strategic plan to it. But also then, so that's what I would call the fun part. Then looking at the other side of your brain, like putting the deal together. So looking at the hard costs. I'm going to write here. This is an example from Wheeler Place, one of the 3-bedroom townhouses. Just figuring out this is what I do. I figure out what the per square foot cost is, all in hard and soft costs, and then I multiply it, but based on like the average unit size, and I take 10%. I add that for hallways and exterior, and you have a basic back of the envelope, idea of what costs are. You build your operating budget. There's tons of operating budgets online. If you can't find one, just let me know. But on any of these, I would say don't skimp on the costs, because once you start, whittling stuff down, if you start really thin, it's like, if you're a wrestler, right? If you want to make weight, you want to give yourself a couple pounds. You don't want to just be killing yourself every time, because that's going to be really tough. Sources. Again, this is more for U.S. deals. And so concessionary capital, or in the blended part of that capital, is extremely important. It's probably anywhere from 30 to 65% of your capital capital stack, your cap table. So low-income housing tax credits, you can look at the state qualified action plans. They're all online. Home and CDBG funds, they usually run through the state. Again, you can just Google them. State and local funding, probably less. In some, wealthier areas, you're going to find that, and philanthropic funding. I really would not try to focus so much on philanthropy, just because a lot of these deals are so big. A couple $1 million is really not going to make a difference. Now, again, if you're looking at a product or service within affordable housing or some type of real estate deal, maybe philanthropic funding can help you, get it stood up and get to scale. But as far as doing bricks and sticks, and you're thinking about ongoing funding, philanthropic funding, I would suggest, is really good for like initial startup capital to get proof of concept or product market fit. But after that, in operating, it's probably not sustainable. In home ownership, it's pretty much the same types of funding except low-income housing tax credits. And then commercial capital, it's usually limited to your permanent mortgage. If you want to do mixed income and you have, like if you're in a higher cost market and you can get the rent or get the sales to work, maybe you can get an equity investor in there. I would say try that out. I think the best deals from sustainability standpoint, meaning integrated within the community, are not just 100% affordable. Really, you want all types of people living there together. That is a hard thing to do, but I think that's a really good thing to do. I think that's the best thing to do, and those are the deals I try to focus on when I look at deals now. And opportunistic government programs. So the nice thing is, when you all now, I think you're an MBA student or undergrad, there's a lot of money coming out now, a lot of money, especially green funds, 15 to $30 billion. And the nice thing is when government puts out money very quickly, is there are opportunities to figure out how to craft to do that. I'll talk about a little bit how I did that with my team on this. Back then, it was the Build America Bonds program. And then once you create this model, really just keep showing it to people, right? Get as much feedback as you can, right? Get feedback from the people who you think are going to hate it, right? Get people who you think are going to love it. And the more people you show it to, I think the more people, the more it will just get improved. Looking at impact, how you measure impact. So this is, a big question these days. This is something I'm literally funded for about a year and a half to do this. And I just picked two. There are a bunch out there. There's this one organization. The name is escaping me right now. I can email it to the team and they can email it to you. The executive director is Michael Kress. It's Impact Evaluators or something like that, and they're coming up with a bunch of different frameworks. I might be working with them later, but I think they have some really valuable ideas on what goes in within the four corners of the page. I'm working with List right now. All their information is not public yet. I asked them how much I could show this, and right now, they have their website and things of that nature. If more comes out, and I'd be happy to share it with the team. But looking at these questions, who does it benefit? Is it community centered? How effective it is? Alignment, risk mitigation, and contribution. And there's a link. I'll share my slides as well. There's a link to their matrix. I think that's a good starting point. What I'm doing is I'm taking existing financial metrics and tools, and also the value chain and finance, and integrating it within them. So I'm trying to put these sort of two together in a way for funds to work. And I've been working with a couple funds. What I would say, my preference is always to try to, when you're looking at this, build it like you would any kind of investment thesis, right? Look at the things that you want to measure, or it could be binary, like if it's place-based, if you're working with a certain population of people or subpopulation of people, put that in there and figure out how to count them. Figure out how to count them not only when you're underwriting the deal, but when you're actively monitoring the deal when it's running, right? That doesn't matter if it's a fintech, if it's affordable housing, if it's healthcare. Build that into your baseline operations and make it as frictionless as possible. Meaning, look at the data that's already being collected and figuring how that's going to be useful for you. Second thing, I was like, look at around the data, what can be monetized right now? Put a dollar sign to it, and figure out how to, again, collect that through existing channels, and then use that in parallel with your financial metrics. I have a way of at least I'm testing a way to put those two together. I think if you just set up those disciplines and saying, if this is what I'm going to count, this is how I'm going to count it, this is how I'm going to count it when I evaluate a deal, and this is how I'm going to count it when I evaluate an ongoing deal, I think you'd be well ahead of a lot of funds, and I think that's a good way to think about it. If you have any questions or concerns or ideas, I'd be more than happy to talk, since this is what I do basically on a daily basis. So when I talk about the due diligence, that's like sort of the innovation. This part of it is sort of the perspiration, This is, when the rubber hits the road. I would say innovation and perspiration. Innovation is like probably like 1 to 5% of any idea. 95% or 99% of the deal is just getting there and doing it, right? And so birding cats, I found this, humorous little thing here. And once you have your deal, your schematics and your financing put together, testing that. What does that mean? Just putting out in front of people, and that magic doesn't. Just keep testing and keep putting it out there and updating it. And the more you update it, the more you're gonna figure out, like, what it's gonna look like, or what it can look like, and what is possible, what is not possible, right? And there's no sort of other way to really do it. You just got to kind of get out there and do it. What I would say is just be strategic on who you show it to first versus who you show it to, because the golden rule, like, she who has the gold makes the rules. That doesn't need to only mean money. That could be power and influence, right? That guy Harry the Greek had no money in the deals, but he could sway the politicians, right? I would always go to him first. There's Harry the Greek in probably every community. So work with them. So on this deal, what happened? And again, it's funny. This was the easy deal I worked on. The political shift. The site went from, there was potentially an ancient artifact on the site. It ended up, it was a petrified dog, somebody's dog from 50 years ago. Stop construction for, a good year and a half trying to figure out, what this was. Principal, I took over this deal. I took over the whole Hawaii workings, because and this stakeholder, he was important not only to the company, but he held all those relationships. He lived in Hawaii. I went there and I had to go, but it was a 20-year-old kid, not having those connections. That was a tough thing. It was a great learning opportunity. Switching from home ownership to rental was not a fun conversation to have, but people, we did it. And then figuring out, at that time in 2009, when the market crashed, like, there was no deals happening, right? Like, no one was saying, they were like, we are not doing anything at this point, right? Like, the markets literally stopped, one of the very few times. And so, necessity is the mother of innovation. So we gave them 2 deals. We actually figured out we got commitment, like hard commitment letters, meaning, they were going to fund these deals from 3 financial institutions. So the first one was keep it home ownership. So there was this program called the Build America Bonds program, where the U.S. Treasury would pay 45% of the interest for the term of the bond, which was kind of unheard of. So we went to our investment bank at the time. Said, well, what if we float this bond? They said, you need to get one person to buy the entire bond, because we're not going to put it out in the market, and it has to be AAA guaranteed. So I was like, all right, like, this is, people put up these like crazy things because, number one, they just want to, you keep moving on. But we were like, okay, we'll do this. So long story short, there was this program, the 221D3 program through Ginnie Mae. which provided a AAA guarantee in construction and permanent financing. So we worked with the lawyers to wrap the Build America bonds with the AAA guarantee. And then we got NEBF, the National Electric Benefit Fund, so the basically union electric pension fund, to buy 100% of the bond. And we took this and we had a traditional low-income housing tax credit bond or a bond program, 4%. And we went to the county of Hawaii and said, which one would you like? We had, I think it was almost 200 and it was like almost $200 million in commitments, which literally nobody had at the time. It was kind of insane. They picked the LIHTC deal and talk about going to the community and going to everyone. We had at least 130 different iterations of this model. I couldn't. I went back in my files and I stopped looking after 130 some. So, but and we showed those to the stakeholders for what was it, 7 months? Yeah. So you could do the math. 130 divided by 7. But and that was not even that was like the minimum amount of meetings. But they ended up going with that. The funny thing was that our lawyers used that structure with the Build America bonds, and they probably closed, I don't know, 100 deals like that. Probably did easily over a couple billion. So at least somebody used it. But at the end of the day, it got built. Our partner actually bought us out, and there was 202 units of rental housing. This is it here on the right. Yeah. Took about 8 years and probably took 2 years off my life, but it was a fun deal to do. So happy to answer any of your questions. I put a bunch of what I would say are really innovative companies here on the right who are doing products and services and investments. So take a look at them. Some are startups, some are traditional financiers, some do and just invest in the paper behind the real estate. Some are modular housing, and all pretty cool. So happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Dan. All right. That was a fantastic example. It was great hearing you talk about it. I looked at the slides before and it's fantastic, but being able to hear you talk through them is way better. So I appreciate that. All right, so it's open for any questions you might have. Who wants to start off? All right, go ahead. Hyojong.
Hi. Can you hear me well?
Oh.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So actually, our team is looking into more of a zero equity housing cooperative model to provide affordable housing as a rental format in the Bay Area. So I was wondering, what's your take on the zero equity format, especially with regards to how we want a community integrated form, and it not actually being on the wealth building spectrum.
Yep, that's a great question. So shared equity. So I used to be on a co-op board of a shared equity deal in Boston. So you look up Alston Brighton Community Development Corporation. I think they have a 400 unit deal that is shared equity. I think it's a great model. What I would say on that is that, and this might be too in the weeds, right? Is that where the community representation shows up, there's a lot of education that needs to happen for the board, right? Because the operating budgets are vital to the organization, and a lot of affordable housing, the operating budgets are really, really slim, right? So you need to make sure that people who are on the board know that you can't sort of skimp on that or try to bolster it up. But in the Bay Area, you also have, you have Bridge Housing, who does a lot of work. I think it's good. What the buy-in is, what the term is, what what does it look like for wealth creation, right? What does that but my question to you, and something to think about, is if you're doing a co-op versus a traditional like LIHTC deal or things of that nature, you know, what is the benefit to the community member who's in there, and how long until they reap that benefit? Because you're adding on a layer of complexity to an extremely expensive, like probably one of the most challenging places to do affordable housing. I know Bridge, in one of their last deals I saw, like the total development cost per unit was like about $1 million. So how much more does that add on, and how much of that could be allocated towards those residents? But I think it's a great model to look at. There's just some sort of safeguards you have to build in to make sure it stays permanently affordable, and that wealth creation is something tangible and real, versus potentially putting that money back in the community and building a health center or things of that nature. Like, what does that look like? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I actually have another question regarding more zoning issues. So as we were looking into like how to do those things, we were also looking into ways of like not actually building or reconstructing new structures, but like attempting to rezone some of the old buildings that are unoccupied currently. Like, do you have any advice into how to like justify or like, build out the source or like the traction for those kinds of stuff?
Okay, you went in and out a little bit, so if I just repeat the question back, you were saying that you were looking at zoning and how to acquire like vacant buildings. Is that accurate? So vacant buildings in the Bay Area, it depends on the local laws, right? So if it's vacant and you're allowed to have a vacant building, then you have to go to who owns it, right? And it's just basically you have to acquire it, short of any kind of like eminent domain and something like that, which I doubt you could probably use. If there's some laws like in Detroit where, if it's vacant for a certain amount of time and there's certain or there's very clear delineation what vacant means, then you have the opportunity to buy it. That being said, it takes a long time to do that, entitling, and especially in somewhere where the Bay Area, where it's very expensive, it's very prized to have real estate, right? Because density, you can only go so dense. So how competitive are you in that? And what kind of patient capital do you have that will sit and wait, or have the potential to wait with you to one, beat everyone else out, right? So because you're going to go against like the big developers, right? Or developers with deep pockets. And then two, probably going to come down like how good your lawyers are, right? If there's especially a big site, you're going to have the crevasse, the Venables, the Arnold Porters of the world, where people are paying $1,000 an hour for junior lawyers. How are you going to beat those people out? Not to say it's impossible, but I don't know. It's more a legal question and a timing of capital question.
Hi, Dan. This is Royce. And first off, just want to say thank you for such an interesting presentation. I learned so much, and then I really enjoyed how you brought the two case studies of the two development projects. It was really cool to hear stories from your experience then. So I have two questions. But first, to give some more background about myself, I work as an analyst at a venture capital firm. So people that I tend to talk to who are in the VC space, who are former founders themselves, tend to be founders who've exited their companies and then go into venture capital. So I'm curious, why did you not go down that more traditional path, and what drew you to go to ESG ventures given your fintech background?
Yeah, to be honest, I have never been that motivated on money. I like interesting questions, and these are probably the most like interesting questions. That's kind of why I got out of real estate. Real estate development, I think, is really good if I don't know if you ever see the movie Groundhog Day, because you're gonna have the same conversation every day for 3 years. Getting the deal done every day. I could wake up and I could tell you how much I'm going to work on the pro formas, who I'm going to talk to that day, and do that. And now, I think, I'm really lucky. I have the opportunity to sort of work on what I want to at this point until I don't get paid anymore. Then I got to get a real job. So, yeah, if there's a good deal that you have, Royce, that I can make a 10x return on a VC deal and then retire, hit me up, let me know. I'll be more than happy to take that call.
Then also just curious, for the times where you've recruited people to join your team, typically what are some traits or qualities in people that you look for?
Yeah, so like on a real estate team or innovation team or investment team? Anything,
all of the above?
or just in general? All of the above. Well, let me take a real estate first, and then I would say baseline financial acumen, putting a deal together, right? I think that's regardless, and I think that's something business schools do really well across the board. I think like if you're really doing like new things, like a couple of these, like I think Module is an interesting company. They just came out, right? They just got funded through Y Combinator. They just got a $2 or $3 million thing. They're working on modular housing. Isuzu at Wigmo's, that's like $1 billion company right now, looking at credit enhancement for and helping people build credit. Rock USA. A lot of these companies, I look for people who are just willing to put the work in, because this is really hard work. Like there are days you come in and you're like, holy moly, this deal is going to die. How am I going to keep this on life support? Like forget about the innovation, like when I talk about the innovation perspiration ratio, like there's a lot of perspiration. You just really have to want to do this kind of stuff. And I think that comes through in interviews when you're talking to people and like what drives them, right? Somebody from these, one of these communities, if they want to do that, they're willing to put in the work, or even not, like really showing past experience. Like I was a teacher at a reform school, and I worked in the prison system, and I also did some work abroad in conflict zones. People work in like high pressure systems. Not always, but I think, being grounded like that works well. And just willing to put in the work, right? I think that's, at least I've seen it's pretty evident in resumes and things of that nature, but and also willingness to be wrong, like out of the 130 like 130 pro formas, 120 and I've moved wrong. There's a bit of humility there, like really working with that, because if you think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, you're just going to get you'll be proven wrong probably by iteration 10 versus iteration 129. Does that answer your question, Royce?
Absolutely. Grit and resilience are super important.
Hi there. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We've never had a affordable housing person come on Live Challenge in the past few sessions and last year, so this is exciting for me. I help run a nonprofit that's completely run by UNC students called Solar Equity, and we solarize affordable housing in North Carolina, and we're also looking into resiliency and efficiency as solar can be super helpful for some cases, but not as helpful for others. But for this challenge, we're actually taking a little bit different of a standpoint. I don't know how familiar you are with solar in the Southeast, but it's incredibly difficult with the to implement community solar or shared solar systems in the Southeast. And so we're looking to implement a model of community solar / shared solar, whatever they call it in the state, for mobile home developments to essentially increase wealth assets for people that don't own their homes through, like, generating larger sums of income through lower energy payments. And so we are looking into how the state and private actors can get involved in this, because it would be helpful for the state and local government to have a little bit more of a stake in the project, as the utilities would be more inclined to do these projects, if so. So I was just wondering if you have any ideas or your opinions on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. So Rock USA, resident-owned communities, they work exclusively with mobile home communities and manufactured housing communities. I would argue that they are probably the most successful new affordable housing developer in the last 10 years, maybe the last 20. So what they do is they buy these mobile home parks they buy the land from in the private market, and then they sell it back to the community members in a cooperative model. So the first woman, Miss Ewan, I think that you were talking about, this is somebody you probably want to look at too, because they do this really, really well. They probably have about 30,000 units, and they don't need philanthropic dollars at this point. They're going through and they're getting a new president right now. I work with them a decent amount. When they sort of stabilize and the ship goes, I'd be happy to talk with you more. I'm at the Innovation Junction. I rent the desk there, so stop by anytime. I think it's an interesting model. There's one company startup. They just got sold. They have a deal in North Carolina. I can get you the name. It's just escaping me right now. I think it's a good model. I think one thing to look at in states that have utilized 501c3 bonds and tax increment financing, you get a scale. That might be a way to get cheap money to do this kind of deals. That being said, to do a TIF, or no, probably not a geo bond, but maybe like a private activity bond or something like that. Maybe somewhere that really is focused and is willing to take the risk and has a credit rating, like somewhere like Asheville or maybe Durham, or you'd have to look at somebody like a third ring suburb for manufactured housing, but somewhere within that target market where you could get, I don't know, 20, 30, $40 million deal. That might be something interesting at scale. I don't know what that looks like as a startup, or how like what is the minimum amount or minimum number you'd need. I'm happy to talk with you offline about that. But I think it's sort of big picture when you look at it, think big, probably, TIF or any of this money that's coming out now. The nice thing, since you're in North Carolina, self-help, they might be getting a big chunk of this money, this green money. They went for all 14 billion. There is no way that they're going to get it all, but they're probably going to get a good chunk of it. And they're right down the road. So that might be somebody to collaborate with and talk about with. But they have some really good green experts, and to be honest with you, I'm more of a dabbler on that side, but yeah, looking at the green money that's coming in, looking at the end game being like a TIF or something of that nature. The states, like I would say, like Minnesota, Vermont, New Hampshire. I don't know how good they are with getting sunlight, but I know those three states, they have money set aside through tax like bond financing for mobile home communities.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely send you an email and reach out for more questions.
Cool.
Dan, when you say TIF, are you talking about tax increment financing?
Yeah, that's something I have done in the past. And what we were successful in doing is taking the real estate taxes that would have been paid for new housing and getting it to fund the bond before. And you can imagine, you need like, all the stakeholders along that, the state there, maybe not the state, but like like, so we looked at it in Newark, right? So at the time, Cory Booker, was on board. We had from a philanthropic, we had Queen Latifah. She was going to put up some loan loss reserve or, some back money. And it was like 40 million. But the nice thing was, we just underwrote it with the bank, with the iBank, to say like that taxes, the real estate taxes for 30 years, we're going to pay off the TIF, right? So then it becomes like it's just a PV, like a present value, how much you can get based on that payment. And that's been done less now. I think there's more energy around that now. I know Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has been looking at that. And I think it's an underutilized resource. But like you need to get a big deal. It's hard for a startup to do that, right? You need to have like somebody like Jonathan Rose or like a bigger developer would have to come in with expertise, because they're not going to take that kind of execution risk on a startup. They might, you never know, but like I mean, it's unlikely.
Thank you so much. Any we have 2 minutes left. Any last 2-minute questions? Social impact measurement, stakeholder engagement. Although Dan's done a great job of already talking about stakeholder engagement. All right. Well, Dan, do you mind if they email you if they have questions, since your email is up there?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. This is wonderful. Really, really appreciate the example and your time answering questions as well. So everybody have a wonderful week and end of 2023. If you have any questions, send us emails and we can send you more resources. Other than that, keep an eye out because we will have more coaching session schedules coming out over the next couple weeks for all of January. So take care, stay healthy, have fun, all of the above. Thank you.